If you're brand new to CNC routers, but you're not really sure how to create a project, this video is for you because I am going to walk you from start to absolute finish on how to design this project right here. You'd be surprised how easy this really is. IDCWoodcraft.com. I'm Garrett, CEO of IDC Woodcraft, the company that provides you and other CNC creators with the router bits that carve out your amazing CNC projects. If you are brand new to CNC routers, you may be finding yourself a little intimidated. How do I work with the design software and get a project like this over to the CNC router and carve it out? If that's you, this video is for you because I am going to take you through this is home sign from absolute start to absolute finish. So by the time you are done with this video, you will have this project in your hands, the physical thing. So this video is going to be a complete walkthrough. You and I are going to be hanging around together for a little while today, but I can promise you this, you're going to learn more in this one video than you would by watching 40 other videos. That is a promise. Just stick around and go through the process. What we're going to do in this video first is I'm going to take you up to my office and we are going to do the design work on this. I'm going to show you how to do the whole thing. Then we're going to take that design, bring it over to your CNC router, carve this puppy out, and by the time you're done, you're going to be holding this and hanging it up on your wall. So with that, we're going to get up to my office. But first, I just want to let you know I am going to introduce a lot of things to you. So I'm going to put a lot of information down in the description of this video, plus some downloads, including this file where you can actually take the file and the G code and carve it out yourself. I'll remind you about the stuff in the description a little bit later. Right now, we are going to get up to my computer. I'm going to start showing you how to design your This Is Home sign. Let's go. We're in my office at my computer and I'm going to show you exactly how to design out this project, and then we're going to take it out to the CNC router. I'm going to show you how to set it up and get your router running, and by the time you're done, you're going to have a finished project in your hands, the This Is Home sign. Now, everything I'm going to be showing you can be done on any design software. I personally use the Vectric design software, and that's what I'm going to be doing in this video. If you use a different design software, just follow along with the principles. If you use the Vectric design software, do exactly what I do, and you will have the sign that I have designed here, the This Is Home sign. The first thing you got to do is you got to tell the software your material size, so you know what you're working with, and it knows what you're working with. So this is what we're going to start off with. A piece of pine 24 inches wide, 16 inches tall, and 3/4 of an inch thick. But thickness can be an issue. So we'll get to that one in just a second. So we're going to get into the Vectric software, and I use VCarve Pro, but it doesn't matter what Vectric version software you use, whether it's Cut 2D, VCarve, or Aspire, you'll be able to do everything I am doing here. So first thing you got to do is create a new file. So select the Create a New File, and your screen is going to change. In the middle, you got this big area that has a rectangle in it. Right now, Vectric thinks that rectangle is your material size, so we need to change that up. So first of all, you want to make sure this is a single-sided job. You look over here, it says Job Setup. And the very first thing, the job type is it a single-sided, double-sided, rotary? It depends on your software whether you have all these features, but we want to make sure it is single-sided. The next thing we have to do is set our material size. So first thing is the width. We're going to make that 24. The height, I want you to make 16. And the thickness, now you see it says 0.76. This board, when I bought it at Lowe's, it was labeled as 3/4 of an inch thick. But no material that you get is exactly the thickness. And that's why we need to measure it, and we need to measure it accurately with a pair of calipers. Tape measures don't work in many ways when it comes to CNC routers, because CNC routers are accurate machines, and tape measures aren't that accurate. So we have a pair of calipers and we're measuring the thickness of the board. You definitely want to get a good average. So you measure the four corners, and I have already measured this piece of board. The average is actually 0.76, not 0.75. When we cut this project out, I want to cut all the way through the material, but I don't want to go below the material. So we are just going to set it at 0.76. There's a couple spots that's a little bit lower. I'm taking the thickest spot, 0.76, so everything is taken care of very nicely. It's very important that you measure some of this stuff very accurately. That's why you have to have calipers. I will link these down below. This is from IDC Woodcraft. We're going to come in here, make sure our thickness is 0.76. Of course, you want to make sure that you're set on inches or millimeters, whichever one you prefer. Now we have the Z0 position, and it says we can set our Z0 off the material surface or the machine bed. So we're going to talk a little bit about setting 0. There is X, Y, and Z0. When you're setting up your project, the machine has to have some kind of reference point. We call it the 0 point. So you have a 0 point in your X direction, the side-to-side motion that your router makes, in the Y direction, the back and forth direction that it does, and in the Z direction. There has to be a 0 in all these directions so that the machine knows where to start at. So when it comes to your material, are we going to set our Z off the top, or are we going to set it off the bottom? Well, in this case, we're going to set it off the top because we're doing a single-sided job and we're doing all our work on the top, and then we're just simply going to cut it out. So we don't need to go to the set to the machine bed. There are scenarios where you want to consider that. That's why they have that option in the software. However, we're not going to do that here. We also have to set our X and Y 0. So you have options. You can set it on any one of the corners or anywhere actually, but we are going to set our 0 right in the middle of the material. Just keeps it easy that way. So let's do that. So we have our Z set on material surface and our XY datum position. You see these little buttons all the way around. We can select any of the corners, or we can select the middle, or if we have this checkbox checked, we can literally set it anywhere just by changing numbers. But you make sure that checkbox is not checked and that button is set in the middle. Then don't worry about the rest of the things and select OK. Now our material's set up, and you notice on our screen we have these two axis lines right in the middle. So that center point right there, that is our 0 point. And that is where everything is going to refer from when we set up our CNC router bits. We have our home sweet home sign. The first thing you want to do is save the project. So we're going to do that. And the way you do that is go up to the menu at the top, click File, come down, click Save, and then go to the directory that you're going to save your projects at. And we are going to type in home, this is home sign. And that's it. I'm going to click Save. And now the project is saved. So we are now ready to start designing the sign. And it's going to be actually fairly quick. And by the time you're done, you're going to feel really good, especially if you've never designed before. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the text. We're going to do a rectangle with these internal radiuses here, and then we're going to do an offset rectangle so we can create this inner rectangle so you get this really cool boundary. And then we're going to take it over and do the toolpaths so we can carve out all this material to get this cool sign. Now, the font that I'm using here is not available in Windows software. You can go find fonts in many different places, and that's exactly what I did. I'm not going to cover that here because I've got another video for it. So we're going to use a different font, but I will make this particular file available to you for free. I will link that down below. I will remind you about that later. We got to get you to learn how to design a basic project. And what's really cool about this, right, in CNC all the way around, is this is actually a really meaningful sign. You can have this sign, like I said, I'm going to give it to you for free, and you have the right to sell it. I don't care. Do what you want with it. You'll be able to move this because it is a personal sign. And it's very personal to me as well. It is because when my wife died, Barbara, back in 2011 from cancer, kind of left me empty and missing something, like an emptiness. And I also lost my sense of home. And it took a long time for me to feel that again, about 10 years. And then I went on a search for a home, and I got my dream home here, this cabin, my office, really nice. So this has a lot of meaning for me, and that's why I'm showing it to you. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is create the rectangle, and then we're going to do the text. You have all these icons over here in the left. These are all your design icons and editing for designs. But your main icons that you're going to be working with is up in the top where it says create vectors, where you have circle, oval, rectangle, and polygon, a star, and then you have a line, and you have an arc, and then a freehand, and then we're also going to work with the text. Now we're just going to work with two things here, the rectangle and the text. So let's start with the rectangle. We want to click on the rectangle. And up top where it says anchor point, you can click right in the middle. Again, we got 4 corners here. And I'm not going to dive into that here. I just want you to click in the middle and your rectangles be formed from the middle. Don't worry about the X and Y numbers right here. What's important though, is down below, and whatever software you have, you'll have to work with where this feature is at. But where it says corner type, you see here we have this corner right there. And we want the software to create a radius. This is when we create the rectangle right now, what this is telling us is it's going to have square corners. And you see these little 3 buttons here. That's telling us how we're going to set it. Right now it's set on square. If I go to radius external, then you now see this little line change to an external radius. So all 4 corners of the rectangle will have a radius on it, but we want the internal radius. So you want to click internal radius, and we're going to make the radius just below it. We're going to make it 1.5. It's already 1.5. Now we want the width and the height of the rectangle to be set. Right now it's at 5. So your width, we have a 24-inch board. We're going to set the width at 22. And we're going to set the height, 16-inch tall board, we're going to set it at 14 and click create. Now you notice that the rectangle came in a weird spot. No big deal. We're going to close that, and what I want you to do is select the rectangle. And the way you select the rectangle is either put your mouse right on it and click it, and you'll see it turns into this dashed line, or you can go above it or below it, hold your left mouse button down and cross over it to the left. Very important that you do it to the left. And then let go of your mouse button and you'll see you now have selected it. So I got to stop for a second. When it comes to designing, you have to have a mouse. Design software is designed to work with a mouse. If you have not been a mouse user, this is your time to get a mouse. I'm not kidding. If you don't have a mouse, you're going to fight with this software. You'll find out if you don't use a mouse. I'll link this mouse down below. It's a Logitech. I use it all the time. It's really good. It's wireless. So make sure you get a mouse. Okay, so we got the rectangle. It is offset. How are we going to figure this out? Well, it's very simple. We've selected a rectangle. I want you to hit the F9 button. When you hit the F9 button, it's going to center your rectangle over the whole project. Hit that, and there we go. It is now set up, ready to go. Couldn't ask for a better centering of the rectangle. Now the next thing we need to do with this rectangle is create another rectangle. We actually have to do an offset of the same rectangle so we have the exact same rectangle inside. So it's called an offset. And we want this rectangle to have nice corners. It's the best corners you can get. Round router bits don't make sharp corners, but we're going to tell it to put a corner on there, and it's going to make this boundary of this sign look very, very nice. What you need to do is select this rectangle, and I'm just going to click on it, and then we're going to come back over to the design area, and down at the bottom, it says offset and layout, and you want to hit the first icon. It's got a blue square and a red square around it. Select that, and you're going to open up this menu. What I want you to do is select inwards left. And what that's going to do, it's going to create a mirrored rectangle basically, or it's going to offset it to the inside. And we're going to set that offset to 0.75. Make sure this checkbox is checked where it says create sharp offset corners. If you don't do that, it'll round out the corners. Then you click offset. Now I want you to watch the screen in the design area when I click offset. And here we go. Now we've just made our inner boundary. It was really that quick to make this rectangle. So this is how easy it is. Now we're going to get to the text. Then we're going to be done with the design work, and then we do the tool path. We're going to tell it how the router bit should run, which router bit, and what have you. We are done with the boundary and border of this project. So now we're going to hit close, and now we want to do the text. So you hit the big letter A in the Vectric software, whatever you're using, find your text, get into it, and when we click it, you're going to notice out in the field there's this dotted boxed line there. That's where the text is going to start at. And what I want you to do is make sure the text is center justified before you start typing. So in the Vectric software, you go down about halfway and you're going to see left, center, right. You want to make sure the button next to center is selected, which it is. Now we're going to type in the words, "This is home." By the way, up at the top, just click the text button, not the text in a box. So we click in the text box, we're going to type in "this is" and hit enter, home. And we now have our text in the sign, but it's not very good text. It's pretty plain. So you can change your font, and we are going to change it to a Calibra Candera. So I'm going to select that. It's okay. It still looks a little skinny, so we're going to bold it. I want to make sure you hit the bold button, and that'll thicken it up. That looks good. The reason I'm not using the text here is because it does not come with Windows. I actually had to get this font from somewhere else. Now, because this is such a cool font, I'm going to make this exact project available to you for free. I will link that down in the description. Don't get it yet. I'll remind you about it because it's definitely just a cooler font. It's got more character. In the meantime, let's go ahead and get this project taken care of. When we look at this text, it's there. Okay, it's pretty good. The size is pretty good. Could be a little bit bigger. We'll see. We're going to close this. What I don't like in the text is the words "this is" and "home" are spaced too far apart. I don't like that at all. So here's a quick tip for you. And what we're going to do is make sure this is highlighted. So we know it's highlighted when it's turned purple. If I click somewhere in the middle of the screen, I'm going to deselect "this is home." But we can click on any of the letters, and that's going to bring all letters into selection. So how do we bring the words "this is" and "home" together? Well, while they're selected, right click on the screen, and you're going to see in the middle of the menu that pops up, it says text. Go over text and then click break block into lines. And you do that, it now has separated the upper and lower lines. Now I can select home, and you see "this is" not selected. What I'm going to do is hit the arrow keys. So the arrow keys, you can nudge things around when they're selected. So I'm going to hit the right arrow key, then we're going to hit the left arrow key, down arrow key, up arrow key. I'm going to bring this up just a bit. So the reason they give you this feature is so that you can adjust things a little bit, just like we're doing right here. Bring them a little closer together. Now we've got that moved, I need to recenter this, and I need to select both "this is" and "home." So the way we're going to do that, again, is by holding the left mouse button down and creating this little box and coming over both of those. We don't have to put them in a window. We just need to touch them both, let go, and now they're selected. And now we're going to center them up. Now before we could hit the F9 button, I'm going to show you another tool real quick so you can center it up a different way. F9 is really easy to get it centered on the job. So you come over to Transform Objects, and the last icon, when you hover over it, says Align Selected Objects. Click that, and you go up to the three boxes at the top, and I want you to click the middle button. And what that's going to do, it's going to center the text to the material. So watch the text when I click it. It's going to move a little bit, and now it is centered up. We're going to close that, and now we're looking at the text. And it looks like the text could be made a little bit bigger. So how do we make that bigger? Well, here's a little quick tip for you that you are going to be using quite a bit. We are going to double click on "this is" home. Right now it's already selected, so we only need to click on it one more time, and you're going to have these little beads that pop up all around it. Now you'll notice in the upper corner, or all the corners, is a little white bead. So you hover over that bead until you get the crossed arrows. Hold the shift button down, and then hold your left mouse button down and just move your mouse a little bit, and now we're making it a little bit bigger, just to fill in this sign a little bit more. There we go. I am feeling good about this. And that, my friend, is it. You have just done the design work on this. This is home sign. Now it is time to create the toolpath. Another fairly quick and easy thing to do. So let's get you going on that, and then we'll turn this into G-code, and then we'll get this over to your CNC router. I'll show you exactly how to set this up. So we are in the design area. You know that because you have all the design tools on the left. We need to get to the toolpath area now. And however you do that in your software, get to your toolpath area. Toolpaths are what the router bit does, right? A router bit comes in, it follows a path to cut out the material. So that is what a toolpath is, and that's what we're about to tell the software to do, is what router bit we're going to use and what it's going to do. So this whole job, we're going to use one router bit, we're going to use 2 different toolpaths, and then we're going to set it up on the CNC. So let's go over the toolpaths. So if you notice up at the top, it says design. Next to the word design, there's this little arrow that you hover over. It says switch to toolpath commands. When I press that button, the design area on the right is going to go away, and a menu is going to on the left, and then the menu is going to show up on the right. So I click that, and now we have the toolpaths. All this has to do with toolpaths, and the keys down here are different control things. And everything is brown as a toolpath. Depending on your version of software, you may not have as many buttons. Don't worry about it. You'll be able to do everything I do here. So the first thing we are going to do is do a pocket toolpath. So we're going to do a pocket and a profile. So I need to just explain the difference between the two. This project is basically a raised letter sign. You can see all these letters are raised up. This border is raised up. It's actually not that way. We've just removed material around it to give it that effect. So in order to remove the material around all this stuff, we have to do what's called a pocket toolpath. Now I want you to think about a pocket this way. I got my glass of water here, and inside is a pocket. The top outside that's holding the water is the profile of the cup. So this out here is the profile of the sign, and in here is the pocket of the sign. So I hope that makes sense. If it does, give me a thumbs up. If this video is helping you out and you're getting along already, then give me a thumbs up and maybe even subscribe to the channel, because I have a lot of deep dive videos. This video is really just intended to get your first project on your machine and in your hands so you know that you can do this. All right, so let's get this pocket taken care of. We're going to use this toolpath right here, which is called a profile. We're going to use that to cut out the project. Here is the pocket toolpath, and that is going to do the recess around the letters. This is home. So we're going to start with that one. Going to click into that, and the first thing we need to do is select everything that's going to be pocketed. And the pocket starts with the inner rectangle, this guy right there, and it stops around the letters. So we need to select the rectangle and the letters. So I've got the rectangle selected. I want you to hold the shift button down and click over one of the letters. So now we have this is selected. Now keep holding your shift button down and select the word home. And now we have selected everything for this pocket. Now we have to set up our cutting depths. If you look up at the top, it says start depth. And the start depth needs to be set at 0. Basically, we're telling the software we're going to start at the top of the material, and that's where you're going to start cutting into the material. We're going to cut 1/4 of an inch deep. So all right, we start at 0 and our cut depth is 1/4 inch. Now, down in this box is where we need to select our router bits. You see I've got a compression end mill selected. That is actually what we're going to be using. But when you start off with this stuff, there is probably not going to be anything in that box, or you might have other router bits. We need to remove those and then select one from the database. So I have clicked the compression end mill, and down below it, we're just clicking remove. And now that cleared that out. Now we need to get the right router bit. So you come down and click the select button just below the big white box there. And what that's going to do is open up your tool database. Now, what is a database? The database contains all the router bits and all the settings for those router bits. There's lots of different parameters that every router bit uses, and they're all different. So there's the speed, that's how fast your spindle's turning. There's the feed, how fast the router bit is going to be moving through the material as it's cutting. And you have your depth of cut, how deep it's going to cut. And there's something called step over, and there's other figures out there as well. Every router bit has to have all kinds of data populated into the database. And when you start getting a lot of bits, that you're populating a lot of information and you have to do it by hand. The better thing to do, and I want you to do this, and I'm going to link it down below, is for you to go to the IDC Woodcraft website. As you see right here, at the top, there's a menu. It says Database Downloads. You're going to click that, and you'll see here, you can get a database for Vectric, Carveco, Carbide, Create, and Fusion 360, and have everything populated in your software in one shot. It's going to save you a ton of time. So I will cover that one again later in this video. I want to remind you to get down there in the description because I've got some free resources for you as well. I'll talk to you about that in a little while. Stuff that reference tools that you're going to need anyway. We're going to go into this database and we want to find the 1/4 inch compression. So we're going to come down, find compression end mills, and come down, select the 1/4 inch compression end mill. If you don't have this in your database right now, then stop the video, go down the description and find a link that I put in the description that says download the database, and go follow that, get it in there, and come back to this video because you need this router bit to do this job. So we're going to select the compression end mill. Now you can see there's all kinds of data in there. We're going to select that bit, and now you can see that bit is selected. The next thing we want to do is decide on what's called offset and raster. We're going to select raster, but I want to basically explain to you what the difference is between offset and raster. It is actually the cutting method that it's going to be using when it's carving your project. Offset will bring your router bit in, and it will start in the middle, and it'll start to work around and make steps out like that. When the router bit crosses the grain, it leaves something called witness marks. The tool actually makes marks across the grain, and that's really hard to sand out. So we want to avoid that by using a raster. The raster simply goes back and forth. It doesn't do this very much unless it has to when it's going around the letters. So we are also going to tell it to do a first pass profile. And what that first pass profile is when it first comes in to clear this out, it's going to profile all around these letters and around this boundary. It's there to support the lettering so you don't get any chip out on the corners of the letters. So let's get that set up here. We're set on raster, and down below it says profile pass. You want to make sure that you get that profile pass first. So select that. When the drop down comes down, then you click first and you're ready to go. And then we're going to simply click calculate. And now you can see all these lines that have come up. Now you have a piece of wood on the screen. All these blue lines are the actual path the router bit is going to take while it is carving out this sign. There are red lines as well. The red lines are all the rapid movements. So the router bit's going to pull out and it's going to move somewhere else. And you want it to move somewhere fast before it goes back down to cut the material. And you notice that all these blue lines are going back and forth. That's showing me that we're doing a raster cut. Now let's take a look at it. We're going to preview the toolpath. So this menu that has opened up after you calculated is the preview toolpath menu. You're going to come and click the preview all toolpaths button. When I do that, you're going to see that it's going to actually carve the project out. And there it is. It was that quick. We're going to come up this little toggle box in the upper right of the screen. Hold our left mouse button down and rotate it around. You can see now we got this is home. So my friend, you have done half of the toolpath of your this is home sign. Very, very cool. Now we're going to do one more toolpath, and that's the actual cutout, the profile pass. So we just did a pocket. Now we're going to do a profile. We have to close out this preview toolpaths menu by clicking the close button. And I want you to notice down towards the bottom right, it says toolpaths, and we have one that says pocket one. That is the toolpath that we just created. If you ever need to edit that toolpath, all you have to do is simply hover over that word and double click, and you'll open that toolpath back up. So we're going to close that, and now we're going to do the profile toolpath. So that is the very first icon under toolpath operations. When you hover over it, it says profile toolpath. Select that. We're going to set the start depth at 0 and your cut depth, you want it to be the full thickness of the material. Now sometimes we forget how thick our material is. So there's a little quick trick to just tell the software, hey, just make it the full thickness of the material. And that is by, let's just pretend we have a 0.1 in there. And we need a 0.76. So I'm going to hover over that. I want you to type in Z and then equals, and now it says 0.76. Make sure that this little checkbox underneath that says Show Advanced Toolpath Options is not selected. We click that, it's going to bring up a lot more stuff. We don't need to cover that right now, so unclick it. The next thing you need to do is select the router bit. So right now it says Tools, and there's only one here, you only need one, and it says Compression and Mill 1/4 inch. But let's pretend that it had some different tool in there. Again, you click the select button, and that's going to open up your database. And you look at all these tools. These are all the tools eventually you're going to have populated in your database. You might as well get it all in one shot by going to idcwoodcraft.com and downloading the database. Again, I will link this down below. We're going to select the compression end mill and click select. And now we want to make sure, you have to make sure, that where it says machine vectors, you have selected outside right. I want to explain what this is. So when we're doing a profile cut, we can actually tell the router bit to cut on the line. So the center axis of the router bit is actually right on the line. So it's cut in half inside the line, half outside the line. Or we can tell it to cut inside the line, or we can tell it to cut outside the line. We want the router bit to cut outside the line. So this line right here is the actual profile that we've designed. We want to cut that on the outside. We click outside right, and everything else is set. So one more thing we have to do. We need to add tabs to this. When this project gets cut out of this raw stock, there's going to be waste. And at the final cuts, it can actually move the project if there's nothing holding it. We're going to be clamping on the four corners of the project, but the project is on the inside. There's not going to be anything supporting it when it actually cuts it out. So we need to add tabs to the project. Very quick and easy. Down below it says Add Tabs to Toolpath. So click that and then click the button where it says Add Tabs. Now for your tab length, make it 0.375, and for the thickness, make it 0.25. Then click Edit Tabs. So Edit Tabs is now created. Over at the top, you want to designate how many tabs you want. There's a little up and down arrow. We want to make it 4 tabs, and then come down and click Add Tabs. It says Unable to add tabs. Okay, that's because I didn't select the new stuff. So right now we have these tabs on the inside. We want to close the tabs. There's a little mistake I made. While we're in this toolpath, we need to select the outer boundary. So now we're selecting that, and now we're going to go back into Edit Tabs. We have the 4 there. We got to go back to Add Tabs, and now the tabs have been added. You can see one on each edge. There's 4 tabs, and that's it. Simply close it, and then come down and calculate. And now you can come up and click Preview All Toolpaths. And there is your project, and you can see right here is a tab. We got a tab right up at the top there, one down at the bottom there, and if we rotate the project around, we've got one right there. So now when the project cuts out, then you will not have it move on you, and you'll just cut the tabs from the waste material. We are done. At this point, all we have to do is create the toolpaths. And you can see right here at the bottom, it says toolpaths. We now have the pocket and the profile. Let's save the toolpath. So we're going to come to this little save icon right here. It says Save Toolpath. Select that. The first thing you need to do probably is populate your post processor. The post processor tells the software how to write the G code for this project. Post processor is necessary, and each machine has its own post processor. So I want you to set that up. If you have like the Altmill or the Longmill CNC, that's a GRBL based machine, and you can get the GRBL post processor. Now, when it comes to the post processor, most of the machines that you get for home shops, whether you for business or just for hobby, they are going to be the GRBL based machines. However, if you are still in the market for a CNC router, then I would suggest that you check out the Longmill or the Altmill for several reasons. And those reasons are, number one, the price point is like really, really nice. But number two, they're really good machines. And I've been working with the Longmill for quite some time now. The Altmill is relatively new, but it is definitely a very solid machine. And you'll be very surprised about the price, like I just said. Anyway, if you're in the market, I've got review videos for both the Altmill and the Longmill. So I will link those down below in the description of this video. I would definitely check that out if you have not gotten a CNC router. All right, let's keep talking about this post-processor thing. But nothing's going to be added in yours. So click that, click Add Post-Processor. This menu will open up. Come over and click the little plus button, and all the post-processors will be in the Vectric database right here. If you do not see your machine in there, then you need to contact the machine company and ask them for the post-processor. So I already have mine, but what you would do is just select one and click select. And now you can see it's populated right here. If I click OK, and now we come over to post processor and click that drop down. That one has now been added along with the one I have, but we're going to take the one that I have, the GRBL. There's one more thing we have to do here. Up at the top it says select toolpath, and then it says visible toolpaths to one file. And then it says visible toolpaths to multiple files. I want you to make sure you click visible toolpaths to multiple files and then check the group when possible, because this will set you up to cut all this in one shot. Down at the bottom where it says toolpaths, it's got the little check box next to it. Click the check box and you are now ready to save this toolpath. And you can see all these toolpaths are visible. You've got the pocket, and then you've got the cutout. And take a look. Then let me just show you quickly what the toolpath looks like. I'm going to make the material go invisible, and there are your toolpaths. It's everything that the router bits are going to do. So we're going to turn that back on. We don't need to cover how I did that. I've got another deep dive video course that you can take that explains everything in this software. It's a deep dive, about a 5 hours worth of courses that explains everything. By the time you're done with it, you're going to really understand this software. I will link that down below as well. All right, so here we have checked the toolpaths, and what that's telling us is we want to write the G code. The G code is what tells you the CNC router how to run. It's going to write it for all the toolpaths we've created. And then come over and click Save Toolpaths and go to the directory that you want. We are going to be in the downloads directory. We're going to call this this is home sign. Hit enter, and we go to the directory, and right there is the this is home sign G code. And now, my friend, we have done everything. You have created the design, you've generated the toolpaths, and you created the G code. Now it's time to get to the CNC router. So what you're going to be doing next is taking this and turning it into this. So we're going to get out to the CNC router. I'm going to talk to you a little bit, give you some prep talk. I'll show you how to prep the material, how to clamp it down your CNC, how to set your CNC up, get the G code into your control, and then we're going to start your machine to get to cutting. And when you're done, I want to see pictures of you making this. So I am going to also give you this particular file with this particular font, like I said, because it's just a cooler font than this one we're using. Anyway, let's get out to the CNC router. We are now at the CNC router, and this is where the rubber meets the road, where things get really fun, where you turn this piece of wood into this very cool sign. This is home. Something that's actually quite meaningful, like I told you before, and other people will find it meaningful too. Now, like I said, I've made this available to you for free with this font and the one we've been working on. I will have that linked down below in the description, and you can make them and sell them all you want. Here's the disclaimer, it's all yours. So before we get into actually making this, we have to do a little prep work on the wood. I mean, we got to make it from this to get into black on here before we actually start carving, so it turns out like that. So before we do that, if this video has been helpful for you, then please take a moment, give me that thumbs up down below, and also a comment down below. If it's helpful, I really want to know. So your comments are going to help me out, or if I missed something, or if there's something else you want to know about, I will make a video on it, but I don't know unless you put a comment down below. So please take that moment and subscribe to the channel, because I've got a ton of videos for beginners to teach you how to work with your CNC, do all the design stuff. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. So we're going to get into the prep work on this project, and then we're going to get it on the CNC router. Before we do, if you're still in the market for a CNC router, I want to let you know that not all CNC routers are made the same. There are good ones and there are not so good ones. And you want to make sure that you know exactly what you're shopping for. Shopping for a CNC router can actually be a bit of a challenge, because if you don't know about them, then you don't know what to look for. So that's why I've come up with the Ultimate CNC Router Buyer's Guide. This guide, relatively thick, is going to educate you on CNC routers and the important things that you need to be looking for and the things that you want to stay away from. This guide is also available to you for free down below in the description. As a matter of fact, I'll just make it available with this so you can just get them all at the same time. All right, this is going to get fun now, because we're now going to prep this material and set it up on the CNC router. So here's the supplies that I am using. First of all, I have my basic project material here. This is just pine. It's a bunch of strips glued together. I got this from Lowe's, and it is 3/4 inch thick by 16 wide by 4 feet long. And we have the sanding sealer. So we're going to seal it with this. This is a water-based sealer. It works great for this kind of stuff. Of course, a paintbrush or a roller. And the sanding sealer will dry very fast. I'll show you when I get to it. We're going to have whatever spray paint you want to use. So I'm going to use just a flat black. I like this Rust-Oleum because it dries so fast. And we need 220 grit sandpaper. That's going to clean up the project material after we put the sealer on it. And then you're going to need Oramask. Now the Oramask is an adhesive backing, or this plastic that if it wants to separate, it goes on your project material here. I'll show it to you later. Goes on your project material, and that protects whatever you painted, and then whatever we carve out, you can paint whatever you carve out, then you peel the Oramask off. So the first thing we're going to do is seal this board up with the sanding sealer. I'm going to put 2 coats on it, and then we're going to sand it. Then we'll put the Oramask on. There's a certain technique to do with the Oramask, so I'll show you that. And then we'll simply put the spray paint on and cut it in half, and then we'll get it on the CNC router. So I am only going to seal one side of the project because I'm going to hang this inside, and the purpose of the sealer is so when I paint it, the paint does not bleed into the grain of the wood. So that's exactly why we're going to seal it off. You can also seal it for weather reasons if you want to take it outside. If you do that, then you would want to seal both sides of it, but when we cut this thing out, you'll need to seal the edges as well. So let's put our 2 coats on here. I'm going relatively heavy because pine is a porous wood, and it's going to soak this stuff up like a sponge. The first coat is on, so now I'm going to put a fan on it to dry it. In 15 minutes, this will be dry because it is water-based, and then I'll put the second coat on, and I'll put the fan on it again and let it dry for maybe a half an hour, and maybe give it another hour to cure, and then we're going to sand it. So let's dry the first coat, and then we'll put on the second coat. I ended up putting 3 coats of sanding sealer on here just because I wanted to. Now it's rough, so now we need to sand this up and smooth it out so we can spray paint it, let the spray paint dry, and then we'll put the Oramask on. So I've let this cure for 24 hours and I resanded it again and dusted it off, and now I'm going to spray paint it flat black. You can use any color you want. You may not want to use spray paint. I'm just doing it for the sake of this project for this video. So let's go ahead and spray it. Make sure that you use ventilation when you're using any kind of aerosol paint. So I sprayed it on pretty heavy so I can just do it in 1 coat. And as you can see, it's all sitting on top. The paint is not soaking in at all. So once this dries, I'll give it another 24 hours and we're gonna put the Oramask on. So I wanna show you the Oramask. This is called Oramask 813. You can see it right here. It says Oramask 813. And this is available in 10-foot rolls, 20-foot rolls, 50-foot rolls, 100-foot rolls, and 150-foot rolls. I do recommend that you get the 50 or higher roll, because if you have 10-foot, you go through it pretty quick. And you're going to see here, I've got 4 feet, and we are going to go through 8 feet of this or more in 1 shot. So I'm just going to stretch it out and make sure I've got enough Oramask to not just cover it, but a little extra as well. And now that we've got that, we're just going to slice it. You can use scissors, however you want to do it. I'm just going to cut it with a razor blade. And so I've got about 2 inches extra hanging over. And you want to have a nice soft plastic scraper. And Oramask is easy to put on, but you also have to be a little careful. So the first thing I like to do is get it peeled back just a little bit. Not always cooperative. There we go. And I'll peel back a few inches there, and then I will buckle that underneath just like that and give it a little bit of a fold. And now what we're going to do is just line it up on the board so that the edge of the board and the Oramask are almost in line. And we're going to go past the edge of the board just a little bit, and we want to make sure we're going off the edge that way as well. So I'm about a 1/4 inch hanging over the edge, just like that. And I am simply going to lay the Oramask down and just run my finger right along the edge, just like that. Now, if you don't do it like this, then the Oramask, as you start to apply it, is going to start to buckle on you. You need a nice straight edge for it to start on. Then we'll reach underneath and start to pull the backing and take a pad or the scraper, and we're going to start just gently scraping it up. And I'm not doing it very hard. If you take a look, if you can see, there's still a lot of air underneath here. It's just making adhesion in just a couple of spots. That's all I need. And we're just going to keep pulling this back. Just take your time with the Oramask. Now you can see on this board right here, we've got a little bit of a pit. That's okay. I'm not going to worry about that. We can fill that in and repaint it if we need to, but I'm only going to make the project on one side of this board anyway. And when you get it all applied, nice and gently, just like that. We have a lot of excess right there. This is garbage. And here goes the other 4 feet of the Oramask. Now I wanted to stop for just a second and say this part of the video where we're working through prepping the project might feel a little bit drawn out. But this is important stuff that we have to do, that you need to do to prepare your project, your This Is Home sign, to set up on your CNC router so that it looks good when you get it off your machine. So bear with us because I'm still giving you tips about everything throughout this entire process. Just wanted to just make that point that this is all just necessary stuff that we have to do to get your project, your This Is Home sign, done the right way the first time. Let's keep going on the prep work. And this is exactly why 10-foot rolls are a waste of money, or a waste of time, because you're going to go through it this fast. And you use Oramask all the time. Now the Oramask I will link down below in the description of this video, and it's one of those things that's just a, if you're going to make signs, you want Oramask. You just want it, because you'll be doing a lot of stuff just like this. So we've got this deal here with the Oramask where I only need this much coverage, but I have this wide a piece. And so what we do is we're simply going to trim the Oramask in half. So I could either use a straight edge and trim it down. Right now I just laid it right where I want it at, and I'm just making sure I've got extra. And there we go. All the way down. I don't have the best working surface to be working on with this, but you work with what you got. Okay, you never throw away your excess Oramask, because you will use it quite a bit, and especially a strip like that. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll reapply it on the board. Make that little fold back, lay it out over on the edge there, make sure that we got the coverage here, and we're going to overlap by about 1 inch. And that's okay. Oramask, the cool part about it is that you can overlay Oramask multiple times. So you can carve out a certain section of your project, paint it, and then cover that up, even while the paint's still wet, and then proceed with the next part of your carve, paint that area, then cover that with Oramask, and just keep going, and you can carve through multiple layers of Oramask. That's it. So we're just going to do the same exact thing, just very gently run it down. Not aggressive. If you get aggressive, you're going to start getting buckles. And I've got a video that really runs you through how to apply the Oramask, especially if you get bubbles in it. But I don't think we're going to have any bubbles this time, because it's going down so nicely, and I've done it quite a bit. All right, we got it. So the next thing you're going to do is take your scraper, and you're going to put a lot of pressure on it and just work it down. You're going to do it that way, you'll do it this way, and you want to get as much adhesion as you can. We still have a lot of air pockets in there. I'm okay with that for this project. This is a beginner's project, so don't get overzealous like it's got to be perfect. That's one of the things that many CNC creators try to do right in the beginning. Remember, you're practicing. So this is just a nice little project to practice with. And we are getting a couple bubbles in here, so I'm glad of that, so I can show you exactly how to get these bubbles out. So you see I'm pushing some of these bubbles right down through the Oramask. The good thing about this is that there's a lot of air through here, so that as I'm pushing it, that air will just run through and the bubbles will flatten themselves out. But if they don't, then what you'll do is take the razor blade or some kind of sharp object that cuts really well, and you poke a little hole, just a very tiny hole in the bubble, and you'll take your finger and just run it around in a circle until that bubble goes flat. So I'm going to press the rest of this down, and I'll get that a little bit later. So we got all this excess Oramask here, and we don't really need all this excess. So what I do is I will take my razor blade, find that edge, and pop through the Oramask, and just lightly run my blade right down the edge. Again, not aggressive, just letting the blade do the work. And now we just clean that up really nicely all the way down. So we're going to run that all the way around. And there we go. So now we've got the whole thing, just the whole top just covered up. I'm just going to throw it in the garbage can. All on the edge, and I got a little bit of overhang here. That doesn't matter for me. So far, if this video's given you some insight as to how to make projects in a very simple way, then take a moment to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, because this is what I do. I teach you all the steps throughout whatever I'm teaching in a video to teach you CNC, to make sure that you understand, especially as a beginner. All right, so I'm going to just press the rest of this down, and then I'm going to cut this in half, and we're going to use this half for our project Very cool. You've got your material set up, you've got it painted, you have the masking on here, and now we are going to set it up on the CNC router. Now, before you start setting a project up on your CNC router, I want to point this out. It's a really, really important point. There are a lot of little steps that you need to follow as you're setting your project up. And it's very easy to miss one of those steps. And I've seen it a million times, and even as a CNC pro, I miss these setup steps. And the reason this is so important to point out is because one misstep can ruin your project. If you forget to set your XYZ 0, or forget to turn your router on if you have a manual trim router on your CNC router, and setting up the right bit and the right code and all that stuff. And that's why I've come up with the CNC project setup checklist. Right here, these are all the steps that you need to follow as you are setting your project up, and double checking things, your material size and your router bits, making sure you have the right router bits and they're in good order. And of course, your start point checks. This is the thing that most people forget to do. And it's the one thing that ruins a project. You can see in this picture right here, this is a $3,000 epoxy pour table. The person has $1,000 of epoxy in it, and you see it's cut right down the middle because they forgot to set the Z for the surfacing bit. Ruined the table. That's covered on this checklist. So I'm going to be going through this checklist as I'm showing you how we set up the project, but I'm not going to actually explain it here because I have a video that explains it. I'm going to link that video down below, and there will be a little flag up at top that will you can click to see that. I just suggest you just keep going through this and then watch that checklist video later. So we are going to hold this project down with clamps. And one of the things I want to make sure that you understand is we have a 24 wide by 16 tall board, and we need to make sure our clamps are going to be positioned in a way that is not going to get in the way of the of where the router is going to move. So we're going to put the clamps on the four corners of the project. Before we clamp the project material down, we got to find center on the project. Remember, we designed it so the 0 point is in the center of the material. So simply going to put a line, find the center, and then put a little mark. So we're 28 and half, so it's going to be 14 and a quarter right there. And it can be very general because we've got a lot of room to play with on this project. So there is our center point, and now we just need to make sure that the project is square on the machine. One of the things I've not cut into this table yet, because the Altmill is a new machine, which you may want to take a look at. It's a really good machine. I've got a video that dives deep into the Altmill too, and it runs through things that if you haven't bought a machine, it'll explain things that you want to look for in a CNC router. So I'm just going to square this project up. If I had grids cut in here, then squaring it up would be really easy. So we're just going to slide the clamps down onto the material, clamp it down, and we're going to be ready to go. Now you notice these clamps are made of wood, and these are clamps that I have made. I prefer wood clamps over some of the metal clamps that are out there, and the reason is because sometimes we put our clamps in the way of the tool path. And if you have a metal clamp, well, metal and metal don't get along. So your router bits run into metal. The router bits generally can cut right through metal, but you want to avoid that. So I make my own clamps, and you can actually make the same clamps. You see this right here. This clamp file is available to you on the IDC Woodcraft website. So you can make them. They're super cheap. I make these out of pine. I might suggest that you make them out of a slightly harder wood, but they work. And if you have a problem, then you can just make more instead of breaking a router bit. So we are good to go. The next thing is to get the compression bit into the machine. So this is the point where I want to explain to you what a compression bit is and why we are using that router bit on this project. For the type of cut we are doing on this project, we are doing what we call straight up and down cuts. So you see in the project right here, it's basically just a straight cut down and then it goes flat out that way. It also shows up better right here. The cut is down and then flat and there's a sharp corner in the edge, and it's that way all around this project. So we're going to be using the compression bit. But generally, when you're doing straight cuts like that, you're using what we call an end mill. Now, an end mill is what you're looking at here. These are various different types of end mills, and these are all 1/4 inch end mills. There is the upcut, which is right here. There is the downcut, which is right here. And then there is the compression. So we're going to talk about the difference between each one of these and why we are going to the compression bit on your This Is Home project. So there's the case, compression end mill 1/4 inch. So we'll get to that one in a minute. Let's talk about the 3 different types. So this one is a downcut end mill. Now you notice that when I spin this in the direction of the cut, these spirals or cutting edges are spiraling down the project. So what is happening while it is moving around the project, it is cutting along an edge, spiraling like that. And what it's doing is shearing the material downward. And what that does is creates a very clean cut like this. So these downcut end mills, very common in the CNC router world, and that would be one of your very first bits that you would have with your CNC starter set, whatever you get. You should probably get the one from IDC Woodcraft because it covers all the bits that you need in one set. But this is a good end mill, but the problem with this is it does not have a bottom cutting edge. You see it's just flat. The cutting edges come all the way down. And so what that does is as it's moving around, it is actually leaving little micro swirl marks along your project. So it doesn't leave a very clean cut on the bottom. But these are good for cutting projects and definitely making sure that you have these nice sharp edges on your projects. So that's a downcut end mill. This is one of the first ones you'll have in your set. The second one is an upcut end mill. Now, the difference is, as we're holding it along the project and it's turning like that, you can see the cutting edges are spiraling upwards. The thing with this end mill here is it is good for removing material because as it's cutting, it's throwing the material up instead of pushing it down. So it's a good bit to remove material. The problem is with these upcut spirals, as it's making its way around a project, it's actually wanting to shear upward, and you can get something called tear out. In other words, the grains in your material will start to flip up and you'll get these little rough edges all around, and it can actually chip out these corners of your project. Then you have to do repair work on the project. So, but the benefit on this is it has this bottom cutting blade right there. You can, it's a well-used bit, but you can see the little shiny spot right in here. If I can get my pen right over that. There we go. We got a nice bottom cutting blade right here, and there's another one on that side. So it's a bottom cutting, side cutting end mill. So these are good workhorse bits to have as well, which eventually you'll be getting one of these. We're going to use the compression bit. Now the compression bit is a combination of both of these bits. So as that bit is turning, you see that the spiral is going down. But if we take a close look at the bottom of the router bit, there's this little section right here where it actually goes back up. And on the bottom, there is a cutting edge all the way around. So this bit, the compression bit, actually compensates for the drawbacks that you will find with both the upcut and the downcut by combining both into this one bit with the down cutting edge, so that as it's making its way around these edges here, so long as you're deep enough, it will leave a nice clean top edge. Where at the same time, that bottom cutting edge right there will leave a nice clean edge along the bottom and still leave that nice sharp corner right in there around your lettering. So that's why we're using a compression bit. The other thing with the compression bit that makes this beneficial is when we are doing the cutout of the project. The other reason we're using a compression bit is while we're doing the cutout of the project. So again, you remember with the down cutter, we're getting a nice clean upper edge, but as it's actually cutting out, you still are pushing material down. And what that does is cause a tear out on the bottom of the project or on the backside. And this is where the compression bit comes in handy as well. So as it's running along the edge of your project, you're getting a down shear at the top, leaving a nice clean edge. But because we get that little up shear right at the bottom, we're doing a cutout at the bottom, we're actually getting an upcut from the bottom, and therefore it's leaving a nice clean edge along the bottom of the project as well. And that, my friend, is exactly why you want to be using the 1/4 inch compression end mill from IDC Woodcraft. It's time to install the router bit into the collet, and there are certain rules that you need to follow. If you're a beginner, this stuff is really, really important. When we take the collet off and we're getting ready to install the bit into the collet, the first thing you want to do is make sure you blow out the sawdust out of your collet. You do this every single time you change your bit, because sawdust can get up in there, little tiny particulates, and what happens is they act like little ball bearings. So when the machine is running, the router bit can actually slip in the collet. We call it bit slip. And you won't notice it until after the project is running a little bit and your project is ruined by the time you see it. So we just want to make sure the sawdust is out of there. And then we're going to follow a rule about how to chuck your router bit in the collet. So we've got this little chart here. I put this out by IDC Woodcraft. It's called the proper holding of CNC router bits table. And it explains how you should not put router bits in your collet and how you should. This comes with router bits if you're a first-time customer at IDC Woodcraft when you're ordering your CNC router bits. So you have this at your reference, because I see people installing their router bits the wrong way all the time. You have all this shank area, and you want to divide this shank into thirds. This third is what we call the red zone, the middle third is the yellow zone, and the bottom third is the green zone. What that means is you do not want to just have the red zone in the collet like that, like you're trying to get as much out of it as you can. You will break your router bit, you'll damage your collet. The yellow zone is a place where you want to start turning down your speeds and feeds, because you get something called deflection on the router bit and you're starting to stress it because you have too much router bit hanging out there. So we're going to go to the green zone and we're going to leave we're going to put it, so there's a little cut right on the router bit right there. That's called the flute washout. It's going to be about 1/8 of an inch from the flute washout. So we got that 1/8 of an inch gap. We've blown this out and we are going to install the collet now with the router bit back on the machine. And I'm going to follow my checklist. One of the items, make sure the collet has been cleaned and the proper bit has been selected for the G-code file. So we're good to go with that. We just need to tighten this thing up and do one last check, make sure it didn't slip down. We're all good to go there. When you tighten a CNC bit in your machine, you do not want to like super torque it. You want to pull or tighten up the bit enough that you feel it grab and then a little bit more. And that's it. So now we've got that. And now we have to zero our project onto the material. So the Z is at the surface and we are zeroing generally around our little X and Y here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to eyeball the X and Y. I'm just going to move the machine roughly into position and then we're going to probe the Z. So let's get this into position. You know, move it over, come down. So now my X and my Y are in the general position that I need it at. We need to zero it out. So in the control software that runs your CNC router, I use something called G-Sender. We have our X, Y, and our Z positions. So all I need to do is set my X to 0 and my Y to 0. So those are set. Now we got to probe the Z. And the reason I want to probe the Z is because I want that to be set just right. There's two ways to probe your Z. You can either do a paper touch method where you bring the bit down and there'll be a piece of paper between the bit and the surface of the material, and you just edge the bit down until you can't move that paper anymore, and you can zero out your Z there. Or you can use the probe like I'm going to do right here. Now, a little rule, if you're moving your router bit down to get ready to probe, never have the probe underneath it, because I've seen way too many people actually drive their bit right into the probe, and it breaks the bit, it damages the probe. We're going to connect our little magnet here, and we're going to probe this puppy. And here she goes. I like this because we know we're getting really, really close to carving our project. Yes, we are set. Okay, and we got to check our checklist again. I have zeroed the XYZ. We're good to go there. Now it's time to load the program into the control software. So we're in the control software now, and with my Altmill and all my machines, I use something called G-Sender. It's the one I recommend. It's such a nice layout, and it has a lot of automation in the background. So if you're getting a machine, then you definitely want to get G-Sender. That information is available for you to understand what the GRBL is and G-Sender. It's in the buyer's guide. So you definitely want to get the buyer's guide if you don't understand this. So now we're on my computer screen, and I'm going to load this file up. So here's what you do. You click the load button, find the directory that has your G code, and there it is. It says this is home sign, and it's got some text right after it. And we're going to double click it and bring it in, and there is our project. We are literally ready to go, but we just want to finish off our checklist, because there are things that if you don't do right, you can still screw this up. Even though we have set everything up, what I have to do is just double check everything. You definitely need to get the checklist. This is going to save you from making mistakes that you will make. Me as a pro, make these mistakes still. That's why I rely on this. Last thing you want to do after the checklist is when you start this, have your hand on the stop button when you start your machine. When you're cutting on your CNC router, you want to have dust collection. I am leaving this exposed for you so you can watch this really cool sign carve out so you can see what your sign is going to look like. So we are simply going to hit the start button and go. One thing I want to let you know is when you're carving, CNC routers do make noise, so you definitely need hearing protection. All right, let's hit this. This is when the whole project becomes really super satisfying, when you're actually watching the project cut out. Look how clean these cuts are. This is what a compression bit does for this project. This is the moment when it all comes together, when that CNC router starts to carve out the project that you've been working on, and you see the letters come to life, or whatever design you're working on. This is when it really hits home, and there's this feeling of, yes, I did that. This is just so much fun to watch this machine. watching a machine make this stuff just like this. And here we are. We've got the sign actually all made, cut out, and the letters, they pop off the project. This is so cool. We've got the cutout now. We got the tabs here, so we're gonna break those tabs real quick after we get the thing off. But one thing I want to point out here is we are cutting pine. And so pine has this nature in it of leaving fuzziness on the cuts. So if you come up and take a look, you'll notice, like in this area right here, it's a bit fuzzy. So what I'm going to do is I am going to just run this program again all the way through, and that flat edge of the bottom of the end mill with that cutting edge that I showed you before about the compression, that's going to clean a lot of that fuzziness up. We'll still have a little bit of fuzziness with the pine. Just want to let you know that hardwoods won't leave that kind of fuzziness. This is just a nature of pine. We're going to run it real quick again, and then we're going to go on to the next step. We're going to take this off. I'm going to show you how to cut the tabs, and we're going to separate the waste material from the tabs, and we're going to peel off this Oramask, and we'll have a finished project. And I am going to give you this file, and I'll give you a document that tells you all the stuff that I've been talking about, so you can just get the whole PDF, and it has everything on it. You're going to get the G code to cut this out. And one of the other things I just want to mention before we finish this up, if you're brand new to CNC, shopping for a CNC router can become confusing enough, but the next thing that becomes confusing is what CNC router bits do you need to get started? Well, that's where you need to get a good starter set of CNC bits. But there's not many sets out there that's really designed to give you everything you need to get started. So I've put together at idcwoodcraft.com the truly complete starter set where it's a 12-piece set, and it's got every bit that you need that'll enable you to do about 99% of every project that you come up with as you begin. You will need to get some other router bits as you move along, but I do suggest you take a look at that set. I'll link that down below as well with everything else. Okay, let's take a look at this. On the spoil board, we have very light marks. And this is why we measured the depth of the project. So we didn't cut into the spoil board, we just barely cut into it. I mean, I almost can't feel that. And when you look at the project, you can see we've done a lot of cutout here. Now there's a couple spots that are a little bit different, but this is called, this little thin area down here is called an onion skin. Super thin. And that's another way you can do it. You can do the onion skin. Let's take a look at the tabs on the project. Bring it right in here. You remember these tabs that we cut? So there we are. And all we have to do is now cut it. And the benefit again for doing the tabs is it prevents the project from moving when it's cutting the project out. So there's a number of ways you can cut these tabs. I think I need to get a better tool for this. We're going to cut through all these tabs and get this waste material off, and then we're going to finish this puppy up. I just want to remind you, down below in the description, there's a ton of information. So make sure you go down there, get that ultimate buyer's guide if you have not bought a CNC router yet. Definitely get the setup sheet and check out all the other information I got down below. Let's take care of this. There it is. This is what your sign is going to look like. It's beautiful. We just have a couple more things to do. We're going to sand off the edges here, and we're going to peel off this Oramask, and this project is going to be done. And now we get to peel this off, and then we're going to hang it up. So I got a little chip right there. That's from a knot that was in the wood. I'm not going to worry about it. But look at this. You got this beautiful black sign. If you want to protect it, then you can spray it with some kind of clear coat or something. I'm going to leave this very natural because that's the interior of my house. I want you to remember, definitely check out the description down with this video. It's got all that information I'm giving to you, the files, the G codes for this, the design file. Make this thing, and I want you to send me a picture of it when you get done. I want to see it and do the happy dance for you. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe. Please comment down below, what did you think about this video? And be sure to check out idcwoodcraft.com for your CNC router bits, especially if you don't have any, get that starter set. All right, let's finish this puppy up. idcwoodcraft.com.